Hello everyone, this is Siddhi Kapoor and you are watching NDTV Who's That 360. We have Sid Mallya with us today, a very talented author of this book called Glad. So hi Sid, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Yes, so thank you so much for joining us. I read this book, it's too cute, love the illustrations, love the presentation. So let's, quickly start our chat, and I have a lot of questions to ask you. So the
Sure.
first question obviously is, what inspired you to write this book?
Yeah, this is my second book. The first one was also around mental health, and it was a memoir of my own sort of experiences. And I think seeing how well that book did among the people that it resonated with, and getting messages from people saying that, oh my gosh, thank you for writing this. It helped me with my own things that I'm going through in life. That inspired me to continue doing as much as I could to continue spreading awareness around mental health. And then I thought to myself, okay, well then, what could I have benefited from, when I was younger? And I thought, well, actually, a lot of the things that I personally feel like I've gone through, whether it was OCD or depression, whatever it is, I wonder how much of that could have potentially been, I wouldn't say the conditions could have been avoided, but perhaps some of the pain associated with it could have been avoided had I had a better understanding of just what it was that I was going through. And I thought that, well, maybe if we could start educating children about these sorts of topics at a younger age, obviously in a way that's not too heavy because it's still children, but at least, making them aware of
The emotions.
Of emotions and feelings and how these things can change from moment to moment. I think that, that could have helped, that would have certainly helped me a lot more be able to deal with the issues that I went through later in life if I, become more aware of these things from a younger age.
So, like you also said, your writing explores a lot of themes around mental health and self-reflection. So any specific instances that you would like to share with your audience?
About myself?
Yeah, any instances from your life that you feel were important in shaping your thought process while writing about these topics?
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, I talk about how my own sort of self journey started around 2016 when I was at drama school. And I really became more in touch with my feelings and emotions just because of the training that I was undergoing at the time. And that really was the big shift for me, or at least the start of the shift of understanding that, it's okay to feel these things, and it's okay to feel vulnerable and all the sort of things that kind of people are conditioned to believe are weaknesses. I sort of started to see as actually these are strengths, and these are the things that make us human. So that was really the start of my journey. But I think the biggest realization for me through this whole process has been, as human beings, I think we're very quick to understand things on an intellectual level, right? Right. We can talk about it now and being like, yeah, it's okay to feel sad. Of course, we understand that intellectually, but it's another thing to actually then start to incorporate those things into our everyday life. And that for me has been, I think, the biggest learning is that this takes time to incorporate, and we can do all the self-work we want, but we may understand it all on an intellectual level, but actually getting it into our bodies and making it a part of our lives is the thing that takes time, and it takes effort, and it requires a lot of patience.
Okay, so in this book, there's a dog that's always besides you in the book. So describe in one sentence, how do pets, they help people during their mental health journeys? What is the importance of having pets around you?
Yeah, I think, well, anyone that has a pet, especially I'd say a dog, knows that the levels of unconditional love that an animal give is like nothing else, right? And I think, the big thing about a pet behaves in a way that really all human beings should behave to one another, right? They're there for you. They don't question what you're going through. They don't try and fix what you're going through. They're just there for you as a silent support. And sometimes in life, that's all we need from each other, right? We just need someone to know that, hey, you know what? I'm there for you if you need me. And I think a pet personifies that just by being there without trying to fix anything.
Yeah. And in general also, they are so tolerant, and they'll listen to you. They'll give you a lending ear and not throw tantrums like most humans do. So they don't, like, humans don't want to listen to you. They'll never have that patience to listen to your problems. But like you said, pets have that special sixth sense.
For sure. I think that's it. I mean, in general, we as a society, as a race, whatever you want to call it, aren't great listeners. We also, human beings, don't have particularly long attention spans. And the way the world's going with social media and getting your information in 30-second bite-sized chunks from TikToks and Instagrams and stuff like that, attention spans have diminished even further. So actually getting someone to sit there and listen in and of itself is a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
And then what happens is that a lot of the time when people do listen, well, then they feel like, well, I now must do something about it. I must offer you advice, or I must try and fix it. I must offer you a solution, when actually that's not the case. Sometimes just listening is all someone needs.
So like you said about social media, I wanted to ask you, how much time do you spend on social media?
I'm not very active when it comes to posting. I had to start being a little bit more active in the last 6 to 8 months.
Okay.
Because I knew this book was coming out and I'd have to promote the book.
Yeah.
And what my team had told me, they're like, because I don't know much about this stuff, but they're like, because you're not very active, if you start trying to promote the book, no one's going to see it, right? You apparently now you almost have to be active in order for the algorithms and all of that to show the content that you want. So, as a result of the book and wanting to promote the book, I've had to become more active on social media.
That just helps.
Yeah. It helps for sure. Yeah.
It helps for sure. So how do you approach the whole writing process? Do you have any rituals, any particular timings that when you have to write?
No, I know authors, there are certain ones that have specific ways and all. I honestly, and this is not a cop-out from the question, I don't have a process. And this is very similar to like when I'm acting or anything like that. I don't have a uniformed process. What I try to do is I just when something comes to me, whenever it comes, I try and allow myself to be open to receive it. I wrote the majority of this book, if not all of this book, on the Notes app on my iPhone. Like, wow. I'll be walking somewhere, something will hit me and I'll write it down. I'll get something in the middle of the night, I'll wake up and I'll go to my phone and write it down. A lot of the time I tend to be the most creative when I'm moving. So I'll be in the gym on the treadmill and something will come to me and then I'll have to wait till the end of the class and remember it to write it down. So I just allow things to come to me as and when. For the first book, if I'm honest, I sat down and I started writing it. And I think I got about 10,000 words into it. And I was like, this is the single most boring thing I have ever done in my life. And I was like, I can't do this. Like this sitting there in front of a screen typing, this just isn't working for me. So actually how I wrote that book is I'd go for long walks and I'd just have conversations with myself and record them. Yeah. And I literally spoke that book. And then I, take the audio recordings and write it. And I think that's why a lot of people from that book are like, it sounds like you're talking to us, because I actually was talking.
Yeah, it was very conversational.
Yeah, but that's because I actually was conversing with myself in the process of writing it, as opposed to trying to sit there and type.
All creative people have their own way of bringing the best things on the table. So with this book, Sad Glad, what do you hope that readers will take away, and how do you want it to resonate with them? what are the key things that you want them to,
Well, I think for the children, especially who are going to read this, I want them to sort of take away the message that it's okay to feel anything. Not only is it okay to feel anything, you will feel a lot of different things, and these things will change daily.
Yeah.
And sometimes for no real apparent reason. So I think really more than anything, it's about helping children to learn about acceptance. That it's, to accept that these are all part of the human experience and it's okay to feel them.
Yeah.
And then I think maybe for the adults who might hopefully read this book or might read it to their children, it can serve as a reminder that, like, it's okay to feel as well. And like, emotions do change, and we are human beings, and we are completely valid in our feelings, and we have a right to feel whatever is thrown at us as part of the human experience.
I think this book is particularly important for kids because sometimes I feel, because I'm a mother of two, so I feel kids don't understand their emotions. They'll just get cranky. So they'll not realize, whether they are sad, whether they are happy, or whether they are tired. So everything comes down to that mode of crankiness. So it's very important to define the emotions. So I think this book will help them understand their emotions. And it's okay to feel sad also sometimes.
Sure. Yeah, and I'll ask you this question because, you are a mother, you have children, I don't have children, so I'm not best qualified to answer these questions. But again, what you're saying is that the only way a child is going to learn what you just said about labeling emotions and feeling okay to feel these emotions is if the parent creates a safe environment and a conducive environment where the child feels like, okay, I'm okay to express myself, right? And I think that's the big thing, is that, obviously this book is for children, but at the end of the day, it's the environment that the adults create is what's going to determine whether or not a child feels like they can express themselves.
Yes, that is what is important, to give them that environment to accept their feelings, to normalize that it's okay to feel certain kind of emotions. So, Sid, while growing up and even now, what are the kind of books that you used to read, and what are the kind of authors or books that had an influence on you?
I like any kid that grew up in the UK, in my age bracket, obviously all the Harry Potter books were very important to me. Growing up, I was at boarding school at the time when those books came out, so I sort of felt somewhat like I was at Hogwarts while I was reading them. So Harry Potter was a very, important set of books for me. As a kid, I remember I used to read a lot of like Enid Blyton books. Wow. So she had one, the famous five. I think it was the famous five. I think there was also one called the Secret Seven. So those books were important. And then later on in life,
when you were writing this book and even the previous book, so did you have these things in mind? I have to follow this kind of style of writing, or did those writing, that style of writing inspire you in any way, or you were like, no, I'll write it in my own style?
No, well, actually, how this one came about, this one started as a poem. Yeah. Right. And I'm very big on, like, I like poetry, I like rhyming poems, and I also think it's a good way for people to remember things. And I think kids resonate to things like that. So this one started with the poem, and then the kind of the story was written around it. Yeah. But I think, like, if I took any sort of inspiration from this book for this book was, so like Dr. Seuss books for kids, because it's very simple, but it's like done in a rhyming way where kids remember it, right?
Oh yes. Now that you tell me, I can relate to it more.
Yeah. Yes. Right. And then those books, we used to call them Mr. Men. So it's like Mr. Angry, Mr. This, Little Miss Happy, Little Miss That. I'm sure if you Google this, you'll see it. And you'll know what it is. Those little like squiggly figures.
Yes. I have one of those, Little Miss Stubborn. I have one of those.
Like that, like that. That kind of like, I was like, okay, those were like simple written books for kids to understand. So that was sort of like something I saw.
Okay, so my next question, how do you handle criticism and negative feedback? Because that's very common now. You're not on social media, so maybe you don't face much of that. But
No, I see it.
yeah, how do you handle it if you come across such situations?
Yeah, well, I think it's twofold. I think, look, if you're gonna, if there's criticism or if there's negative feedback regarding one of my books,
Yeah,
happy to take it. You know, it's at the end of the day, these books are art. They're subjective. There's going to be a bunch of people who absolutely love these books. There's going to be a bunch of people who think that they're absolute trash. And guess what? Both sets of people are correct because it's subjective and you have the right to view it in any way you want. So if it's criticism regarding something that I've created, I'm fine to take full-blown responsibility and ownership of that. But when I'm being criticized or targeted or abused for perhaps something that I have no control over, and you could probably guess what I'm getting at, sort of things that might be more family related than anything that I've got anything to do with, then it becomes different, right? Yeah. You know, because now you're sort of being asked to take on responsibility and blame for things that you've not even ever been involved in. And the frustrating part is you can bang your head against the wall trying to convince people that you had nothing to do with it, but people are going to believe what they want to believe. So it can get frustrating at times.
True. Okay, coming back to writing, you know, what advice would you want to give to young aspiring writers? You know, because you already have written 2 books now. So,
and this is advice I give to not just young aspiring writers. I give this to any sort of young aspiring creative artist. You know, whether it's acting, writing, music, whatever it is. You know, I don't know if you know this, but I teach acting in the US as well now. And the big message that I try to get across to everyone is just do it. Don't wait for someone to tell you when you can write or when you can act. Like, you know, no one told Picasso when he could paint. He decided he wanted to paint, he picked up a paintbrush and he painted.
Yeah.
Right? So I would just tell people, just do it. You know, I think too many people are afraid to take that first leap. They're like, oh, well, I only become a writer when I get published, or I'm only an actor when I win an Oscar. I was like, no, you're not. Who defines what is an actor, what is a musician, what is a writer? You know, just because I've been published and someone who's written something has not been published, it doesn't make me any more of a writer than they are.
Yeah.
Right? So I tell people, just do it.
So you just said that, you know, you're teaching acting.
Yeah.
So you never thought of, you know, coming on screen or, you know, getting into OTT now? OTT is so big these days.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely, that's the plan, and I'm trying, and I'm doing the auditions, and I'm doing the rounds. And
oh, great.
No one sees this. Yeah, you know, I mean, no one sees this. All I get is journalists writing how I'm a failed actor because I've never been in anything that they perceive to be major. And again, like, what is a failed actor, right? I mean, again, it's a benchmark that's set, which makes no sense. But people don't see, like, if people don't see what goes on in the background a lot of the time. You know, you see someone on screen and you're like, oh my God, that person's an overnight success. An overnight success, they say, it usually takes 10 years to build an overnight success. You don't know what they've been doing when you haven't seen them, right? You don't know the struggle that these people have been going through. And like, am I going to sit here and complain that I'm about my life? No, but you don't know how many auditions I've been through. You don't know how many major roles and big shows that I'm sure you might have, or certainly your viewers will be watching on TV.
Yes.
I can sit there and watch that role on screen and say, I auditioned for that one.
Oh, yeah.
right? But no one cares, right? No one cares. No one sees the hard work that goes in behind the scenes, right? You know, and you're going up against 1,000 other people for that one role,
Yeah.
and you're slugging it out, and you're doing auditions and shooting tapes and doing things like my wife now. I just got married last
Yes,
week. She had an
congratulations.
audition. Thank you. She had an audition that she had to do while we were on our honeymoon.
Yeah.
Uh, we didn't have a camera or anything, so we had to get the suitcases and set up a makeshift
Imagine.
stand. And I got the iPhone out, and we had to shoot it in the bathroom of our hotel room.
It's not easy.
And guess what? If she gets that role, we can talk about it one day. If she doesn't get that role, no one will ever know what we're going through behind the scenes.
So true.
And I want people to realize that, like, you know, people who might think that I come from a certain background or have a certain last name and all of that stuff, it hasn't, you know, helped me in any other way more than anyone else, because if it had, you would see me in these projects, right?
True that. That's very true. And because it's also the hard work, you know, people, it really doesn't matter what last name you have, because ultimately it's your hard work and your talent which is going to speak. So let's hope that your wife grabs that role and you also grab something meaty soon. So one last question, you know, so we've read this book. Let's hope it's a success and it does very well. But now, what next? You know, what is it that you're looking forward to next?
You know, obviously the acting for me is my primary sort of endeavor, but I think the writing is something that I want to continue doing.
Yes.
Here's the thing when it comes to the writing, and especially, okay, it's twofold. One, I will continue doing whatever I can to promote mental health.
Yes.
And as much of a voice as I can give the subject, I always will. When it comes to the writing, as long as the books that I'm writing continue to help people, and as long as I get feedback being like, these books have helped us, I'll keep doing it.
Yeah.
The day I get feedback being like, listen, this book is no good, it didn't do anything for us, I won't do it, right? You know what I mean? I'm not writing these books for me.
Yeah.
You can
Obviously,
ask
you're
anyone.
writing it to raise awareness.
100%. And like,
Yes.
listen, no one's making any money off being an author, right? In 2024, like, people might think that, you know, this book was the #1 national best-selling book on the Nielsen chart in India. I'm not making any money from that. You know what I mean? Like, so the margins on books, no one's going away with a nice little retirement fund. So the money is certainly not the motivation for writing these books. The motivation is, can I continue helping people in a meaningful way? And if the answer to that continues being yes, I will 100% continue to do it.
So with that, I wish you all the best, and all the best for this book, and all the best that you grab something on OTT or maybe some Bollywood or Hollywood movie. So we'll see next in one of the movies. So thank you so much for talking, Sid, and it was a pleasure speaking to you.
And no, thanks very much, and thank you for having me on.